To begin creating this middle or center section, let's do a quick overview of the elements that make up this section. So we have this heading component that says, what can I help with? We also have this input group that has the input elements and a couple of upload icons. And finally, we have these prompt buttons that we can stack horizontally. All right, so let's go back to our code to create all of this. So within our center part that has this middle, we take out middle. And for us to instantly start building, we notice that from here, all of these elements are stacked. They have equal spacing between them and they're stacked vertically. So this tells us that we can use a VStack component. So I'm going to import VStack from Chakra UI. And within VStack, the first element is our heading, which says, what can I help with? We import heading from Chakra UI and just add, what can I help with? This heading will take a style, which is really going to be the size. I'm going to pass a 3 extra large size to it. The next thing is a center component. So this center component is what will contain our input group. So add in center. And within center, we begin to add in the inputs and the other input elements. So let's import inputs here from Chakra UI. And based off what we have in ChatGPT, we see that it has a placeholder that says message ChatGPT and a couple of other styles. So we add this in, placeholder, input takes a placeholder, pop, and this says message ChatGPT. By default, the input comes in a solid variant, but we want our variant to be subtle. I'm just going to pass variant as subtle. Perfect. We change the size of our input to a large size. And the final style to add to our input is to give our input a border radius of 3 extra large. So with this, let's see what we have in our UI. Okay, we're making progress. It's gradually getting there, but we need to add in and tweak a couple of styles. The first thing is the width of this input. Right now, it looks too small. We can modify the width to match what we have in ChatGPT. Our input also needs to have a couple of left icons, right icons, or right elements. So let's go back to our code to fix all of this. I'm going to add in the input group right now, and our input group is what allows us to have the start element that has the upload icon, as well as the other elements that has the submit or icon button. So let's import input group. Input group is a snippet, so we just import it, and we're going to add input or put it within our input group. So of course, input group needs to take a width, knowing that our input right now doesn't stretch. We need to have this as a minimum width of 768 pixels to match what is currently in ChatGPT. And for our start element, let's go back to see what our start element should be. In ChatGPT right now, we see that this is like an upload element, and Chakra UI comes with its own upload element. This is an icon that represents the file upload component, and this is also an icon or an icon button that submits the message. So let's add this in. The start element, we go to Chakra UI and then we search for file upload. So we're just going to copy a simple example from here. We're going to copy this and go back to our input group and set the start element to what we just copied. Of course, we'll make a couple of changes and import what is necessary. I'm going to take out all of this. We import file upload trigger as a snippet, import file upload list as a snippet as well. Now, instead of having, that button we took out, we can actually add in the upload icon from ChatGPT. It's an SVG that we have in our icons folder. So upload icon, and we have it right there, which is perfect. And like so, we've just defined what the start element of our input group should be. Let's check out how this looks like. We are nearly there. We just need to bump up the size of this upload icon and tweak the color as well. So go to upload icon and give it a font size of 2 extra large, as well as the color. We'll make the color FG. Yeah, this is more like what we want. Okay, so for our end element, which is the submit button, I'm going to add the end element prop. And this is going to be an icon button. So I'm just going to add icon button right here. And within this icon button, we have our enter icon, which is an SVG also gotten from our icons folder. Yep, this is what it shows up right now as, and we'll make a couple of style changes to ensure that it looks all good. On our icon button, we add a font size of 2 extra large. We need a small size, so size prop takes the value of small. We also need to have the border radius as full. On this icon, we give it a font size, and our enter icon, give it a font size of 2 extra large as well. So this is how it looks like right now. So one thing we can see when we compare the two is this icon button is disabled when the input is empty. We'll fix that later in the tutorial. So for now, let's go on to build out this prompt buttons. These prompt buttons will have 2 distinct parts, the icon and the description. On a closer look, you'll notice that this can actually be a button component. So let's create this. So at the top of our file, at the very top of our file, we create a component called prompt button. So this is going to be a button component. Prompt button takes a couple of props. It takes an icon props, which is not compulsory. So this will be a react.react element type. And it takes a description, which is going to be a string. Pass props as prompt button props. And with the structure, icon, and description from it as well. Alright, so within button, the first thing is to render our icon. And Chakra UI comes with a span component, which is going to be very useful here. So we're going to add in our span component. And within the span, we're going to render our description. Now, description takes a slightly different color, which I'm going to pass it as an FG dot subtle color. Perfect. So now we've succeeded in creating our prompt button component, and we're going to be using it right here. I'm just going to collapse all of this so it's easy for us to properly identify what we want. All of the prompt buttons based off of what we have in ChatGPT are stacked horizontally beside each other. This tells us that we can add in an H stack to lay out all of these buttons. Let's begin to add in the first prompt button. Remember, it takes an icon. This first icon, let's see what it should be. This is an illustration icon. So I'm going to import all of these icons from my icons folder. I'm going to give the illustration icon a color of green.500. as well as a font size of large. Lastly, prompt button takes a description, and this would be a create image, like so. So what I'm going to do is to repeat this same thing and pass in the required icon and description for all of these prompt buttons. Alright, so right now I've gone into passing the prompt buttons with their required icons, colors, and description, and this is what I have so far. So let's check this out in our UI. Obviously, we need to make a couple more tweaks to this button. So we go back to our code, and the first thing we can do is to go up and make the button a variant of outline. We're also going to make it have a border radius of 4. Yeah, this is looking more like what we want. On our VStack, we can increase the gap between all of these elements. So on VStack, we add in a gap of 6, which is 24 pixels. And on this HStack that wraps all of these prompt buttons, we add in a gap of 2. Yep, this is exactly what we need in this phase. Comparing it to ChatGPT, we say that it's pretty close. So the final thing we want to do is to add in this in the bottom section of our app.